I want to say to every young person that happens to listen to this podcast that there really is space for you here. It sometimes might be tricky to find it. It might take a bit longer to find it, but there is a space for you here in this sector.
We have a lot of catching up when it comes to the renewable energy revolution. We've got a lot to catch up.
I would love to actually take this opportunity to introduce the hosts of the Youth in Energy Conversations segment going forward.
Hi there, my name is Wandile Ntshingila.
Hey, I'm Nolukhanyo Mpisane.
From climate action to clean tech, we are bringing the next generation of leaders into the spotlight.
Where young voices light up the future. This is Youth Energy Conversations. Let's spark the conversation.
Let's spark the conversation.
Welcome to the first episode of Youth in Energy Conversations. Today marks both a continuation and an evolution of this platform, a new chapter. The Youth in Energy Conversations segment is grounded in a simple but powerful truth. The future of energy cannot be built without the voices, experiences, and leadership of young people. Too often, energy conversations are framed by policy, investment, or infrastructure. But behind all of this are real people, real journeys, and real dreams. And young people across South Africa and the continent are already shaping the sector in a bold, creative, and deeply personal way. Today's episode is about making space, not just to hear from young people, but to center them in the conversations, to learn from them, and to pass the mic intentionally. I am joined by three young people in the South African energy sector, Wandile Ntshingila, Nolukhanyo Mpisane, and Nomusa Makaya. Each of them carry their own story of breaking into the South African energy sector. Their journeys reflect resilience, curiosity, and commitment, qualities that are needed to build a future in this sector. I'd like to kick off the first round of questions is really just framing the conversation and trying to get a sense from our guests, where did it all begin, and just hearing more about their backgrounds. Nomusa, if I can start with you, please could you tell us a bit about yourself? What is your background? Where have you been, and what has sharpened your early interests in the energy sector?
I'm Nomusa Makaya, as you have said. I was born and raised in a small town called Wandile, formerly known as Stanger in KZN. Currently, I'm working at Hamilton Renewables as a junior asset manager and electrical engineer. So my journey in energy sector started also after I landed in an initiative led by Sawiwa, which aimed to introduce more young people into the space, into the energy space. So I managed to get an internship with Sawiwa, and that's how I managed to enter the renewable energy space. So I work in a home full of women, actually. There were no boys around at home. My parents were working elsewhere due to work. And that every time at home where there were issues of whether broken iron or fixing light bulbs or fiddling with a radio, I would be a go-to person to fix such things. So that sparked my interest into electrical engineering, which I later pursued. Yeah, so that's basically my background, and that's how I was drawn into electrical engineering initially when I was younger. So I then pursued my national diploma in electrical engineering at DUT. I honestly didn't know what it entailed. I really had to go and search in a library, look up in the encyclopedias just to find out what this whole career was about. So that's how it all started for me.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much for that background, Nomusa. Wandile, if I can start with you. Tell us a bit about yourself. What is your background? What did you study? Where are you from? And what has shaped your early interest?
Thank you, Thokozile. Hi, everyone. My name is Wandile Ntshingila, and I'm from Durban. So what shaped my interest in the sector is back in my second year of undergraduate, I was really fascinated about energy physics, how the environment connects to people, connects to energy. So that really sparked my energy, yes, that really sparked my interest in the energy sector. And thereafter, I decided to pursue a postgraduate diploma in mechanical engineering, focusing on renewable energy. So that just opened me up to all other possibilities within the renewable sector alone, and all the other types of renewable energy that is available. It could be a great potential for South Africa. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Wandile. Nolukhanyo, please could you share a bit about yourself? What is your background? Where are you from? And what has shaped your early interest in the energy sector?
I am Nolukhanyo Mpisane, and I am from Pretoria, but my main roots are in the Eastern Cape. I would say I've always been someone who is curious in a variety of things. My interest in energy started from when I would be sitting in the back seat and my dad would be filling up the car, and just the smell of petrol and seeing the different delivery trucks coming and filling in the tanks. And it just, for me, started from there. And then it would be when there would be conversations around, oh, the price of petrol is going up. And I think as a child, you didn't really realize why there was always this panic when they say, oh, the price of petrol is going up. But I really only got exposed to the energy sector. So in varsity, I studied BCom law degree, and then I did my LLB degree. And then I went on to do my articles at a law firm where they did project finance and a bit of construction. And this is where I really got exposed to the renewable energy sector. Yeah, this is how the energy bug essentially bit me. It's just interesting to see how the different plants are built, what goes behind the scenes in building these plants. So just the whole renewable energy value chain.
Perfect, perfect. And I want to hear from you guys. I mean, what, from your initial exploration or work in the energy sector, just to compare against where you initially started from, what did you initially think the energy sector was about before you really started diving in? Are there any surprises or myths that got busted once you actually got into the space? Wandile, if I can start with you.
For me, I would say there were surprises yet, yes, but I wouldn't say there were myths around it because I didn't really know what was there within the sector. Maybe academic-wise, I had an idea, but once I entered the sector as an intern, first job, so getting into the sector as an intern, juggling everything, I experienced minor challenges as a form of like entering into the world of work, but I wouldn't say necessarily there were myths that were there in the sector that kind of took me off guard or anything.
Thank you for that. Nomusa, what was it like for you entering into the sector? Was there anything that you thought of or had a view of around the sector that surprised you now that you're actually part of the sector?
Okay, well, Thokozile, to answer that, I just have to backtrack a bit in terms of me entering into the sector. I've told the story of pursuing electrical engineering, and then I went on to work in Eskom now. So, Eskom is coal heavy type of industry. So while working there, I would often be curious about my role, my technical role within the bigger scheme of things, within the business or within the energy landscape. So I then went on to pursue my energy leadership qualification at Wits Business School, just to fuel that curiosity about where do I fit in and where does Eskom fit in the bigger scheme of things. So eventually, with all that, I landed into renewable energy sector, and the myths or my first impressions about the sector was the fact that South Africa, as a developing country, probably we're behind. we have a lot of catching up when it comes to the renewable energy revolution. We've got a lot to catch up. But once I was in there, I realized that actually with the right policies and with consistency, there is a whole lot of investors waiting to invest in our transition. So another misconception that I had, coming from a structured work environment where all systems were in place, I thought jumping into renewables, it would be the same. But renewable energy sector is a growing space. So within that growing space, that structured conception I had, actually it wasn't it. So this space involved a lot of learning, a lot of interactions with individuals, where ideas are sparked, where business partnerships are developed and stuff. So I had to move from the technical job project base into interacting with people and just learning from people and forming networks and partnerships. So that's definitely what I had to learn about the space.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think what I love about your story also is that it really highlights the transition, because you kind of moved from traditional coal, Eskom, and power generation to now this innovative new sector, and being able to, I guess, adapt. You're demonstrating to us the just transition of being able to adapt then the skills that you had from working at Eskom to then being able to use them in the renewable energy sector. Nolukhanyo, I'd like to bring you in here and just hear from you. You know, what is it that you initially thought of the energy sector before you decided to dive in? And were there any surprises or myths that got busted once you actually got into the space?
So I think for me, my initial thoughts about the energy sector was I thought of it as a heavy industry where it's probably just for people that did BSc degrees or engineers or more like technical people. But when I got into it, then I realized there's an entire value chain. There are activists, there are policymakers. So really, there are different career paths essentially within the energy space, and one doesn't have to have studied engineering to enter the energy space. So I think for me, that was one of the things. And I think another thing would probably be, when you think energy, you're just thinking coal. Yeah, I think at the time, renewable energy felt like almost like a buzzword. But I think entering into the renewable energy space, it just made me cognizant and essentially see how different institutions are also trying to go green. So not just the building of the renewable energy plants, but the whole green transition.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I want to maybe just ask a follow-up, and now getting into the fact that you've now started your career and you then did get involved in the sector from a work perspective. Would you say then, or what have been any key moments or studies or projects or anything that you've now done from a working perspective, Nolukhanyo, that you feel then has then drawn you deeper into the space?
Like I mentioned earlier, I got exposed to more project finance and construction. So what that essentially entailed was, with the construction, we would draft the contracts to construct the different renewable energy plants. And that just showed me how the advice of different stakeholders essentially is taken into consideration when drafting these contracts. It's not just about drafting, but you have to consider what the engineers think, what the insurance industry thinks. There's a lot of stakeholders that go into drafting these different contracts, and even from a financing point of view, that entails essentially drafting different loan agreements to be able to finance the building of these renewable energy plants. I think for me, though, the only thing is that as much as we were drafting contracts, I got to understand that there are different players within the value chain. However, I don't think I ever got the tangible experience of setting foot on a renewable energy site and actually seeing the actual thing that I was drafting contracts for.
I think the challenge also is with the legal side of things, is that often they leave the lawyers behind. and the transactors and the engineers get to go have a bit more fun. Wandile, I'd like to bring you in here because obviously you come from more of a technical background, from an engineering with an engineering background. How have you then been able to, or what has then been your experience now that you studied what you studied and are now connecting with the energy sector? What can you share from that experience?
Well, my experience is different in a sense that for undergrad, I did a BSc environmental, and then I only changed for postgrad where I decided to venture into engineering because of my passion for renewables as well as innovation. So when I entered the sector in the technical side of things within the renewable energy space, I had to juggle between what I was learning at school and what is currently happening in the sector. So I had to bridge the gap on my own on what is being taught as per the academic curriculum versus what is actually happening in reality. So for me, my experience then ended up being completely different because as much as I was working in a technical side of things within the sector, but I had to also try and incorporate whatever I was receiving from the academic point of view. So it had its challenges, but I managed to conquer because of where ownership period.
Perfect. And I think you also raise an important point in that, especially at the beginning of your career, you'll find more and more that you are having to juggle a full-time job with any further studying that you kind of need to do. So it becomes quite a bit of a challenge. But I guess also the benefit of that is being able to, I guess, test what the academic theory is saying against what's actually happening in practice, and and I'd imagine could make for more engaging discussions with either your supervisors at work or lecturers at school. Nomusa, I wanna bring you back into the conversation, and especially because, as you said, you had started in the sector already as a technician, and I wanted to hear from you. What inspired the shift to actually move towards renewable energy?
Thank you for that question. Actually, it's very funny. I was curious. It all started with curiosity, basically. I was curious about, like I mentioned, the energy landscape. But growing up, when I was much younger, I used to watch on TV, these COP conferences that happen. I used to see these really important looking people making all these tough decisions, although I didn't really know what was these decisions about and what was going on. But I used to really look at those and wonder and think, would I ever even be part of such? So when I was at ESCOM, I would also notice, every time when there's a NESA tariff reviews, that would shake ESCOM. And I wondered why is this affecting ESCOM so much? And that's where the curiosity sparked to say, where does ESCOM fit in the energy landscape? And as I further, research, listened to current affairs, learned more about the energy sector, and eventually decided to, delve deeper into it through a formal education, adverts, and so eventually then I landed into the sector like that. And that's how I broke into the sector, moving from a traditional electrical industry and shifting into renewable energy.
Thank you so much for that, Nomusa. And what would you say the transition has been, or the experience then has been in the sector, specifically then this transition? Would you say it was a smooth transition, or did it come with some tough hurdles?
Not gonna say it was a smooth one or a clean break. No, it wasn't. There are opportunities within the sector, especially for young youth. I'm looking at 20s. So, when you want to pivot and transition at the age of 34, 33, you're almost considered the older youth. I'll just look at 34, 35. So looking at such a transition, because I was 34 when I was transitioning. So it was difficult. I didn't know where I was heading. I didn't know. It just took courage to just say, okay, let me jump a leap of faith. Let me jump from the known to the unknown, which was renewable energy. I don't know what I'm expecting from that, but I figured it's a journey of learning. It's a journey of growing. I figured I consider myself young. I'm very young. I still have a lot of years to give in the industry. So I'm open to learning and experiencing and figuring out what is it that I want and where I want to be impactful. So that's how the transitioning journey, it was worth it. But it wasn't easy because you get a whole lot of regret emails. You don't fit the profile in the sense that you don't have experience within the sector. I definitely didn't have the experience, but I did have transferable skills. So I had to make a decision in order to enter the sector and gain access to go through an entry level role. So that's been my journey.
Thank you for that. It sounds like a very brave journey that you've had to make, especially, I mean, like you're saying, when you're youth in Dala and you're now having to start from the beginning, you don't necessarily fit into the definition, and therefore certain programs or certain roles that are set aside, you don't necessarily fit in. So I think it's quite an encouraging story that you have made this transition and that you have made it work. And I think also a really important testament to the fact that you've got to do the difficult things. Once you've made a decision for yourself, it's easy to make the decision. Making the decision is probably the easiest thing ever. It's now implementing this decision that's often hard, and that often stops a lot of people from taking the necessary steps. I want to get into the real meat behind this interview, because I want us to really have a real conversation about what is actually happening in the field. What are the real world experiences? What is it that you're experiencing firsthand as a young person looking to participate in the energy sector? Wandile, I want to start with you and hear from you. What would you say has been the most unexpected or exciting thing that you have learned while working in the energy sector?
It's very fast paced. So having to juggle all of that while still trying to learn the sector, still trying to find balance, was quite a challenge for me in the beginning. And also the other thing is, as much as you enter the sector, especially since I entered on an internship basis. So now transitioning from an intern to a junior position, when they say there are many opportunities because it's a growing sector, it's not as easy to find a job within the space because opportunities aren't as advertised as other sectors would be. So you need to really dig deep in order to find something of note, basically. So that was a challenge for me when I transitioned from an internship role to a junior level role because of as much as there are many companies, IPPs, consultant, corporate, so on and so forth, but those opportunities that we are told are available aren't as easy to access them because they aren't as advertised as one would want them to be, or the mode of advertisement is just not as easy to access.
Actually, that's quite, and I think quite an important point that you're making, because what we're constantly seeing and what's constantly being said is that the energy sector is open. There are opportunities. Young people get involved. But what we're now coming across is, here's a young person. I have done the internship. I have at least, built up some skills. But now, where to now? Where do I fit in? Nolukhanyo, I want to hear from you. What has been the most unexpected or exciting thing that you've learned while working in the energy sector?
I think for me, I share the same sentiments as Wandile in the sense that during my article program, I had the opportunity to rotate in different departments. But obviously what drew my interest was this energy sector. So my articles come to an end and I find myself with, let's say, give or take about 9-10 months of experience within the energy sector. But you have this experience and you have this exposure, but when you look at the roles, let's say junior, the more junior roles, they would want 3 or 4 years of experience, and it's like, but I don't have that. But I still consider myself very junior, so that's the one like shocking thing I would say. But I also think the other thing I learned, or rather the more exciting thing that I've come to learn, is how different communities are affected by this just energy transition. We often think you just go on a random piece of land and build this renewable energy plant, but these renewable energy plants are actually built in communities. And it's just been interesting for me to see how different communities are affected by these different projects and the different challenges that come with it. So that would be my experience, I would say.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Nomusa, from your perspective, what has been an unexpected or exciting thing that you've learned while working in the sector?
Agree in terms of the challenges that are around the access of these renewable energy opportunities. Definitely, I speak also, like I've mentioned before, the gap between, the older youth transitioning into the space. When you have a bit of experience, but you don't fit for senior or mid to senior roles, but at the same time, you're not entry level, you do have some experience and you don't seem to, fit in, especially if you're coming from, traditional utility industry. So that's one challenge. But then the interesting part and somewhat we have grown to have interest in it when it comes to contract management within the energy space. Like Nolukhanyo, you were involved drafting of contracts. I'm involved with reviewing and managing of those contracts from development all the way till, operation in a project life cycle. And I really got to be involved with reviewing and managing O&M contracts, EPC, and asset management contracts. So that was really exciting. It really opened my eyes to a whole new world of energy projects within the sector, and the fact that drafting getting contracts right from the beginning is actually the backbone of the success of projects within the sector. So there's a space where I really want to grow and also, gain more capabilities in.
And that's a very important space. I mean, the reality is when you think of the average large power plant or PPA agreement, you're looking at about 20 years, almost 20 years that you're looking at. So the reality is if you're contracting, managing that, you've kind of created yourself, at least at the very least, 20 years of job security. So that's quite an interesting way of looking looking and finding a way to actually participate in the sector. Wandile, I want to come back to you here. And my follow-up in terms of asking about the unexpected was really around digging deeper into the challenges. But I think you've really brought a very important challenge to the fore that I think is a real challenge that is facing young people. But what I want to hear from you is, because as it stands, you're still here. You're still willing to be part of the sector. You still want to play your part. And I want to hear from you. What was the moment or project in your journey that then really affirmed for you and said, look, this is it. This is why I'm here, and reminded you perhaps of the impact of the energy sector. What would you say that moment was for you or has been for you?
My internship period, I got really fascinated. I was introduced to wind energy, especially the energy yield assessment part of it. It sparked a huge interest in me, number one, because I got to learn more about softwares that are associated with wind energy, like WindPro. And from there, I feel like a nerd right now, but from there, it just sparked like a certain interest to me, because I also learned that not as many people are focused on wind compared to solar. Many are doing solar, but not wind, and the country is quite growing within the wind space, but we don't have as much people who are doing wind in the country. So for me, it sparked an interest from there, because I was like, I want to be part of that small number that does wind energy. I want to be part of that small number that does the yield assessments, all of those things associated basically with wind energy. So yeah, I think that one project that introduced me to wind energy just changed the entire trajectory of where I want to focus. So what my niche is going to be moving onwards.
I love that. Love that. It sounds amazing. And I mean, you're rightly saying so. I mean, the wind industry really has a lot of room for growth. And I think it's quite encouraging that, there's somebody, with your technical skill, even though you're still at the beginning of your career, but have at least seen some of this stuff. And it's just about getting the right opportunities to be able to build onto that competency. Nolukhanyo, I want to hear from you. What was the moment or the project in your journey that affirmed, or has that happened where you've decided, what, I think this is here for me?
So I don't think there was a specific moment, but I think it's working on different projects. So during my experience, I got exposed to a lot more solar projects than wind projects. But I realized the technology, especially with wind projects, is very much evolving. And in my research, I started seeing what other countries are doing with their wind projects in terms of building wind turbines in the sea. And it was something that I found interesting. And I think the other thing that sparked an interest was the community involvement. I think many of us think that renewable energy is just going to help with the load shedding and whatnot, but you don't actually realize that there are real lives impacted by these plants. And as much as you say, for example, a renewable energy power plant is like 20 years, that's 20 years in a community. So what happens after that 20 years for the people of that community that were working, on that plant? What happens to them? So I think for me, I've found that as much as I've been exposed to the legal side of things, there's an interest in the social community and impact space within this energy space.
And I think you're also highlighting a very important element to this, because at the end of the day, the communities and the communities that are impacted need to be remembered, and remembered, especially, while drafting for these complexities. You need to draft for the ultimate complexity, which is the fact that you are building something on somebody's backyard, and you need to make sure that that there's proper ownership, and there's proper skills, and there's proper opportunities that are being brought into that community. Nomusa, I want to bring you back in and hear from you. I mean, we've kind of got a sense of your aha moment of when you decided that this is a sector for you. I mean, you've been in the sector long enough, you've decided to stay, and now you're saying, I want to go explore a different element of it. I want to then hear from you, and especially with the challenges that we've discussed, and the challenges that you yourself have had to go through in terms of these no's and these rejection emails. What piece of advice or what encouragement, what does one do, as we're facing the challenges, you're trying to find your place in it? What do you do? What have you done, and what could you encourage a young person to consider doing if they find themselves in a position where they want to participate but they really can't?
Piece of advice to young people, or the biggest lesson that I've learned, is growth often requires courage before clarity. Like I mentioned, I wasn't clear. I'm not clear even now as to where I will end up, in terms of the roles within the energy sector. But the fact that what I had to have is courage to pursue whatever that sparked your curiosity. So it definitely starts with being curious about something and following through. Don't ignore that nudging sense of curiosity. Go with it, follow it, be it through reading or going for what you call these free webinars, workshops, seminars within the sector that you want to enter, and forming networks and positioning yourself, using LinkedIn to, find roles that you identify within the sector and seeing yourself doing in the future, and just trying to position yourself in a way that would help you enter the sector. I think that's where young people can start thinking about these types of conversations way early. Don't wait until you are actually looking for work. Start thinking about them in tertiary while you are studying. I would even go back to say at high school, because like I said, mostly you enter, you mostly we do stuff And like what I was doing in ESCOM, when I was in ESCOM, I was working as a commissioning and maintenance technician within the protection department. And I was working in electrical protection of power systems. That's something I've never heard of in high school. I don't even know. I didn't even think I'll be there. I was part of the biggest infrastructure projects in South Africa, where we were building, it was massive. We were building a 765 kV line from Mpumalanga all the way to Cape Town. I've never thought I'll be part of that. But so it goes back to say, just keep moving, keep searching for information, follow that curiosity that's nudging, you. I think that would be my advice to young people.
Thank you very much for that very, very important advice to kind of really keep pushing and keep following that curiosity. I want to wrap this up and just bring us to concluding the episode, and I really want to talk more around finding your voice and finding your space in the South African renewable energy sector, and maybe just asking our guests to just share a bit more around the areas of passion. What is it that from what they've seen they've discovered? I think we've touched a bit on that, but maybe Nolukhanyo, if I can start with you and really just expanding and sharing more about what is one way that you believe that you could positively participate in or make an impact in South Africa's energy sector?
I think for me, my biggest contribution, I would say, is to keep learning, because in learning, you never know what opportunity would come about. So to keep being curious, to keep researching and listening to what's happening in other parts of the world, because keeping up with current affairs could just be my biggest break into the next thing. Because I think also at my level, I feel as much as I know what I know, there isn't a lot also that I know. So I feel like if I can keep learning and keep being curious, there will be something that I'll be able to contribute, whether it be in the activism space, whether it be in the community space, but there'll definitely be something that I'll be able to contribute.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Wandile, I'd like to hear from you. What is the one thing about the energy sector that you wish more young people either knew about or cared about, and how can a young person then go about finding their voice in this space?
I would say finding your voice in this space, number one, is identifying what you want to do, because you can't advocate for something that you don't necessarily want to be a part of. First, it's more finding foot. Where do you want to be in the sector? And then from there, that's how you'll be able to elevate or be able to grow. Because for me, as a young person, I would want to advocate for more young people to join in the conversation, more young people to be involved, because we're trying to bridge the gap between the older generation and the younger generation. So for me to find a voice, I have to first find balance, have to first find food, so that I could know where I stand and where exactly do I want to bring change or add more to the innovation that is currently happening. So as attending conferences, because there are free conferences that are happening within the sector. Like those little changes, those small steps, even in LinkedIn, connect to energy professionals within the sector. That is how you grow, because you'll be able to be updated or keep in touch with what is happening or what the current move of the sector is.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Nomusa, I'd like to end off and close off the interview with you. And maybe it's a bit unfair in that you're as being EU Thendala, this question, but perhaps you can give us a full picture from that perspective. And I want to understand from you, with the experience and the journey you've had in very different areas in the energy sector. What would you say is one key lesson and takeaway from your journey this far that you would want to share with 25-year-old you?
What can I share with my 25-year-old me? I would say you're more than capable, you are capable more than what you currently think. And not to let my circumstances or what I don't know yet, make me play small. The things I'm curious about or chase them, the things I want to know, go on and do research. I'm speaking to the 25-year-old that's sitting at home, that's completed a qualification and hasn't been called for any interviews. You can't just sit and wait for an opportunity. You have to actively chase opportunities, put yourself or like try and relate with where you ideally want to go to, just keep it moving. So as you move, that's where different opportunities arise. That's where you are inspired more as you move. So don't be stationary, do that, upskill yourself, do that Udemy 200 rands course. As you do that, you'll be triggered to say, wow, I didn't know this about this topic. And that will lead to something else. So I would definitely tell my 25-year-old self that rooms that intimidate me, walk in them. Because you tend to be scared and you want to be in your comfort zone and you want to be, when your heart beats and you are granted an opportunity and you want to hold back because of fear. My granny used to say fear is the devil's tool. So once you feel that heart race, that's where you're supposed to be headed. That's the space where you're going to grow. Basically show up, even if it's tough, just keep showing up. Eventually, it will all add up to the woman I want to become. So that's what the advice I would tell a 25-year-old younger me.
I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. I think it's the advice that I'm going to take for 25-year-old me as well. I'll actually take it for 40-year-old me because it's really, really beautiful advice. And thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it really highlights the fact that, in as much as we speak of, and there are these opportunities in the South African energy sector, and as much as there are opportunities for young people, it requires you to step forward, and it requires you to step forward boldly and continuously. And even when there is a no, it's not to say, they said there was an opportunity, but there isn't. Now, what must I do? I think it and in touching on what's being shared as well, is it's very important as a young person to kind of identify where do you see yourself, or where do you think you could best fit and make that concerted path towards it. But I think more than anything, it is to network. It is to attend the conferences that are happening so that you can engage with people that are in the sector. But I think what we really do need to work on is creating more spaces, and that's really what we're seeking to achieve with the platform of youth and energy conversations. But there really is a need for more spaces for young people to be able to engage with the energy sector and engage with the opportunities that are actually that are being presented. I want to close off with something new or something interesting that we're doing for this segment, which I'm loving, and really just close off with a quick lightning round of putting you all in the hot seat. You will all just have an opportunity to answer with one word, and there will be 4 questions that are asked, and you just need to just provide your one word, for each of you one word for this question. So the first one is, and I want to hear quick answers. The first one is energy role model. Who is your energy role model? One word. Who's going first? Nolukhanyo, you're unmuted. We'll start with you. Energy role model, one word.
Linda Mabena Olakunja. I hope I'm saying her surname correctly.
Love it. She's a strong one. Wandile, yours. Energy role model, quick one.
Chanda Ngamalo and Mamosome, both of them.
Love it. Love it. Nomusa, one word. Two, I guess, however long the person's name is. Energy role model.
Nolukhanyo, you stole my one word. and Wandile, actually. But let me go with Lungile Mashile. Let me go with that.
Powerful one. Okay, next round. We'll start with you, Nomusa, since we ended with you. Coffee or an energy drink?
Energy drink.
Nolukhanyo, coffee or energy drink?
Energy drink.
Wow. Wandile, coffee or energy drink?
Coffee.
Another round of questions. And this is a technology specific question. And the technologies are actually so broad. I'm going to just let you decide which one you're going to lead with. Nomusa, what is your favorite technology? One word.
Solar.
Solar. Okay. Nolukhanyo, your favorite technology? One word.
Wind.
Okay. Wandile, your favorite technology? One word.
Wind.
Wind. Okay, right. 2 out of 3. And then the final one, and really just in one word, how would you or what would you describe as your future in energy? In one word, what is your future in energy? And we will start with Wandile. What is your future in energy? One word.
Yeah. I would say exciting.
Awesome. Nolukhanyo, what is your one word to describe your future in energy?
Evolving.
Ooh, okay. Nomusa, your one word?
Definitely go with impactful.
Oh, okay. Lovely, lovely. No one's talking about a bright future in energy. Nothing electrifying about your futures in this space. It was there. It was literally there to pick up. But thank you so much to our amazing guests for sharing so openly, and I think really bringing to the fore some real challenges that do need to be overcome if we are really trying to ensure that young people are actually able to participate in the energy sector. And as we close off this first episode of Youth in Energy Conversations, I want to say to every young person that happens to listen to this podcast that there really is space for you here. It sometimes might be tricky to find it. It might take a bit longer to find it, but there is a space for you here in the sector, in the boardroom, in the field, in innovation, in policy. The reality is the energy sector needs you and needs your voice, your ideas, and your leadership. And with that, it gives me immense pride to officially hand over this platform to 2 extraordinary young leaders who I believe will be best placed to drive critical conversations for young people in the South African energy sector. I think we often speak about let's make room or let's create space for young people, but I think it requires us to be intentional about that. And it also requires us to be intentional about leaving it to the young people to have these kind of conversations. And as my ID book likes to taunt me, I have long left that youth. I don't even think I qualify as youth in Dala. And with that, I would love to actually take this opportunity to introduce the hosts of the Youth in Energy Conversations segment going forward, Wandile and Nolukhanyo, who you've had a beautiful opportunity to get to know in this first episode of the segment. I have every confidence that the two of you will not only hold the space with care and intention, but that you will expand it and that you will challenge it and grow it into something that is uniquely yours. Wishing you both all of the best in your chapter, or in this new chapter of the Energy Conversations podcast, and wishing you all of the best in your segment of Youth in Energy Conversations. And I cannot wait to listen and be led by you. Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. But the energy doesn't stop here. Don't forget to follow, share, and leave a review. It helps us keep the momentum going.
Until next time, stay connected and keep it real. This is Youth Energy Conversations.